Pecha Kucha 312, Punisher Double Bill. So I read two of my Punisher books from the early 2000s this week, in between some real life stuff going on. And I did manage to get a little bit more work done with my storyboard, but it definitely was not such a simple thing this week. So there was a Marvel Max run several years ago where Punisher stories were quite graphic. The first book I'm talking about is actually effectively the plot for the Thomas Jane Punisher movie. This is after the Extreme Punisher stuff. Garth Ennis, who wrote it, actually talks about how the book should really be taken as on-the-face violence for the sake of violence, and you should enjoy it without a guilty pleasure. It's not meant to be a postmodern comic deconstructing the Punisher. So he goes and kills a bunch of mobsters. It has some interesting cameos, such as Daredevil, who tries to stop him from doing so, and the Punisher puts him in a moral quandary where he literally knocks him out, straps a gun to his hand and says, hey, if you want to stop me from killing this criminal I'm about to do, you have to pull the trigger aimed at my head. It also has a character who may or may not have any relevance to anything. Kevin Nash plays him in the movie. He's simply called the Russian. He's a real fun guy. It's not clear if he has superhuman powers. He seems to be pretty much impervious to harm, but the Punisher finds a way because, plot armor comes pretty thick with that guy. One of Garth Ennis's successes with this book is that the side characters actually have what you might call a satisfying character arc, which is usually what you won't find in a superhero book because nothing ever sticks to the heroes or the villains by the nature of continuity, which I'm starting to think is a long-term problem for superhero books because they've never quite figured out if they want it or they don't. The second book was also written by Garth Ennis that I read, and I did kind of read them to compare and contrast. This is one of the explicit content ones. And the previous book is very tongue-in-cheek and humorous. In this book, Garth Ennis doesn't really make any jokes, and the Punisher is about as grim as they come. He's definitely got very obvious undertones of, or overtones, if you want, of Clint Eastwood, from the way he acts just to the outright way he's drawn. I mean, look at this. Who do you think that is? The Punisher's waging a war on the mob. I think it's the CIA get involved, and then there's a third splinter group. So he's caught in a three-way war, and also he finds himself betrayed by his former partner in crime, Micro, the guy that used to give him all his kind of gimmicky superhero bullshit, magic bullets and stuff. I don't know anything about it because I've never read any bad Punisher books. Both of these are great for the side characters that Ennis introduces for very different reasons. There's a very disturbing cast who make up the third party of people in this three-way war. Well, I guess it's four-way because the Punisher is his own guy. I enjoy both books, but it's the Punisher, so you know what you're in for. I also managed to see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is, I would classify it as a 60s Hollywood nostalgia thing, which doesn't mean anything to me. The least interesting Tarantino movie I've ever seen. Not bad, but Ronin is a movie that I enjoyed a lot more as an atypical, I should say, 90s action thriller type thing with Robert De Niro being the wise guy, smooth ass. A movie just full of plots and twists, and it's like a heist movie sort of thing. Easy come, easy go. I also saw Brad Pitt in Ad Astra, which was one of the most artistically valuable movies I've seen in recent time, but the plot wasn't really there. It kind of all fell apart at the end, so while critics quite enjoyed it, I can see audiences kind of shrugging by the end of it. And speaking of shrugging by the end of it, Season 6, Episode 3 of Rick and Morty. I don't know if it's because I just watched Season 1 again last week, where all the good ideas happened, where this thing was fresh, and maybe they were trying to get cancelled every episode. Felt like filler. Wasn't bad, but it felt like an episode of Family Guy. Not as clever as I think it maybe ought to be. I also saw what can only be described as a bootleg bunch of Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, the new TV series from those guys that I think is showing on Channel 4. It just showed up in my queue. Some of the videos were being deleted as I watched them, but my god, they nailed it. It's a very unsettling, crazy comedy / horror thing, but goddamn, it's nice to see people trying to do creative things in the current climate. I also did another kind of calligraphy pen super quick bison picture, this time in profile, because I'm just trying to get it out the way so I can try and get some stuff done with the comic, because we're at that point where it's getting unpleasant, because I have to start making it visibly good, and I am biting off way more than I can chew, but it can be ground through, and that's what I'm just trying to do page by page. I'm putting in all the speech bubbles, and I keep feeling like I haven't got enough room for the art. I still need to finalize the art style, but what's really kind of clicking is the panel layout. And I keep going, I've got a bunch of manga books I'm just flicking through looking for manga conventions. I might even ditch the way I do speech bubbles. I'm now doing the shouting speech bubbles the way I'm seeing them in manga books. Usually speech bubbles seem to just be hand-drawn. I don't want to complicate things by doing a bunch of vector work that just looks sloppy, so it might be easier for me to just use the speech bubble ellipse tool and kind of jury rig it as I go along. Yeah, it's an awkward place to be, and I really don't like the deadline slipping with this book, but I also know that the way my brain works, I'm trying to do everything I can to kind of basically quit this, but I won't quite let myself walk away from it in its entirety. So stuff keeps slowly getting done, which is really this is the thing. Once I have this book in my hand and I've gone through this whole thing, the hope is that it will not seem like such a daunting task to do it again. We shall see, because that's going to be well into next year. But that's the end of Pecha Kucha 312, and I'll see you next time.